They used to call me worthless, a burden, someone who should never have been part of the family. I still remember the day I left home to join the military. No one came to see me off. No goodbye, no hug, just the sound of the door closing behind me, and a silence that cut deeper than any insult I had ever heard. I stepped onto that bus with nothing but an old duffel bag and a heart full of pain. I wasn't chasing hope. I just needed to get away from the place that made me feel like I'd never matter. But years later, I stood in a grand hall in Washington. Soft light fell across the flag behind me, and standing in front of me was the Commander-in-Chief of the United States. He reached out and took my hand in both of his, held it tight, looked me in the eye, and said, "You've done what most never dared, and for that we thank you." Then he pinned a medal to my chest. In that moment, time stood still. The laughter, the rejection, the shame, all of it faded. All I could feel was the weight of that honor, and the silence inside me finally breaking. I didn't cry. I stood tall. My shoulders had never felt stronger, because I realized I didn't need them to believe in me anymore. I had finally learned to believe in myself. I was born into a large family. 6 kids, 2 parents, one house barely big enough for the weight of all our expectations. My father was a strict man, old school, hard hands, harder words. He believed in structure, order, achievement. My mother? She was quiet, but you could feel her disappointment even when she didn't speak. It sat in the air like dust no one wanted to clean. My older brother was the golden child, first to get into college, first to bring home a scholarship letter. My sister followed close behind, smart, polished, started her own business before she was 25. They were proud of her. There were dinners thrown in her honor, smiles that stretched wide whenever her name was brought up. Then there was me. I dropped out of high school at 17, not because I hated school, but because I didn't know what I was doing there. I didn't know who I was, and I sure as hell didn't know what I was supposed to become. Every day felt like standing in someone else's shoes, pretending to walk a path I couldn't see. I spent most days in the garage, working on an old motor I never finished. My father would pass by and shake his head. My mother would look away. They spoke more to the dog than they did to me in those days. One night, at dinner, I told them I was thinking about joining the Army. My father didn't even raise his eyes from his plate. He just muttered, "Figures. That's where they send the ones who got nothing else." My mother sighed and said nothing, but I heard everything I needed to hear. The next morning, I packed my things. 1 duffel bag, a pair of boots I'd never broken in, and a paper with a recruiter's name on it. I stood out on the porch for a long time, just standing there, hoping someone might say something, anything. My brother didn't come out of his room. My sister didn't even know I was leaving. My father? He walked right past me to get the morning paper. Didn't even glance in my direction. And then came the moment I'll never forget. As I stepped down the porch stairs, I turned to look back. One last time, the screen door swung slowly, then clicked shut behind me. No wave, no hug, no goodbye. That was my send-off. The first few steps down that driveway were the hardest I've ever taken, not because I was afraid of leaving, but because I realized I was leaving with nothing, no blessing, no belief, no one who thought I'd make it. To them, I was already gone, already forgotten. I wasn't running away. I was walking toward the only chance I had, to prove that I mattered to someone, anyone. I didn't know what the Army would give me. I just knew it couldn't give me less than what I had. On the ride to the recruiter's office, I sat alone by the window, watching towns pass like blurred memories. All I had was silence, and a stubborn hope that someday someone might look at me and not see failure, not see a dropout, not see a burden, not see what my father saw every time I walked into a room. I didn't cry that day. I didn't have tears left. I'd spent years trying to be seen, to be enough, and now I was done trying. Maybe that's what pushed me forward. Not courage, not pride, just the simple truth that I had nothing left to lose. And that was the beginning. It had been years since I left home, years since I'd last spoken to anyone in my family. The military had changed me in ways I never expected. I had seen war up close, I had lost friends, and I had learned the weight of real responsibility. I had grown into someone I never thought I could be. So when the envelope arrived, I thought it was some kind of clerical mistake. A formal letter, thick paper, embossed seal from the office of Commander-in-Chief. My name printed clean across the top. I opened it slowly, hands shaking more than I'd like to admit. Inside was a summons, not a request, an official invitation to Washington, D.C. The president wanted to honor me. I read the letter twice, then a third time. For a long moment, I just sat there on the edge of my bunk, staring at the wall, heart thudding like it had no rhythm left. It didn't feel real. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know how. Who was I supposed to call? My father? The man who once said, "You'll come home with nothing but a uniform and an empty head." No, I packed my things in silence, just like the day I left home. Underscore, 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 underscore. The morning of the ceremony, I stood in front of a mirror longer than usual. My dress blues were clean, pressed, every button shining. I checked each medal twice. My tie was perfect, but there was something else. A tension in my shoulders, a storm in my chest. I wasn't nervous. I was waiting for the moment I'd feel like I belonged. That moment came later. The hall was enormous. Marble floors, tall windows, rows of flags that made the air feel heavier somehow. There were generals in full regalia, reporters holding notepads, and people whispering as I walked past. But when I stepped onto that stage, the world grew quiet. I stood alone under the lights, facing the crowd. I kept my eyes forward, hands at my sides. I could feel the weight of the uniform, the weight of everything that had led to that moment. Years of doubt, nights of pain, quiet prayers muttered in foxholes and hospitals, letters I never sent, friends I never got to say goodbye to. Then he entered. The Commander-in-Chief himself, President of the United States, walked toward me. He wasn't a distant figure on a TV screen. He was right there. Human, heavy with the burden of leadership, but grounded. He walked like a man who'd seen the worst of the world, but still carried hope in his hands. He stopped in front of me, extended his hand. He took mine, firm, steady, and warm. No podium, no script. He looked at me, man to man, soldier to soldier. Then he spoke. "You save lives. You save hope. You did what heroes do." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It sank into the silence like a stone into still water. And then, with deliberate care, he reached for the medal. His hand brushed against my chest as he pinned it over my heart. The medal was cold, heavy, but in that instant, it didn't feel like a decoration. It felt like a closing wound. Around us, the room filled with applause. People stood. Reporters dropped their pens. Generals nodded in quiet respect. But I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just stood there, still, breathing through a moment I never thought would come. Underscore, 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 underscore. In the back of my mind, I saw that younger version of myself, standing alone on the porch, duffel bag at my feet, watching the front door close. That kid who left with nothing, no pride, no support, just silence. And now here I was, being honored by the highest office in the land. Not because I was smarter, not because I was lucky, but because when the moment came, I chose to stand my ground. I didn't cry. I think that surprises people. But the truth is, I had already shed every tear long ago, in places no one ever saw. That boy who once felt worthless, he didn't disappear. He was still inside me, but now he was standing tall. He was forgiven, not by his father, not by his family, but by the one person who mattered most. Me, Underscore, 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 underscore. After the ceremony, a staffer asked if I wanted to make a call. He handed me a phone. I stared at it for a long while. Thought about dialing the number I hadn't called in a decade, but my hand stayed still. There was nothing I needed to say, because the man I was now didn't need validation from the ones who once looked through him. I stepped outside instead. The sun was high, the sky quiet. I walked alone through the city, metal still warm on my chest. People passed me by, some nodding, some unaware, but it didn't matter. That day wasn't about being seen. It was about finally seeing myself. Clearly, fully, with no shame left to carry. Underscore, 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 underscore. And so, to anyone who's ever been told they're not enough, to anyone who walked away from home with nothing but silence in their ears, you are not worthless. You are becoming. And maybe, just maybe, there will come a day when the world finally sees what you've always held inside. Until then, walk tall. You've earned it. They didn't come to the ceremony. My family, the ones who raised me, the ones who once looked at me like I was a mistake they had to live with, their seats stayed empty in that grand hall. I had hoped, deep down, maybe one of them would show up, even just to sit quietly in the back, even just to say, I see you now. But they didn't, and strangely, I wasn't angry. Not anymore, because somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for them to see me, stopped needing their validation, like oxygen. I realized something that took me years of silence, war, and healing to understand. You can't expect others to recognize your worth if you've never dared to claim it for yourself. That day, standing before the commander-in-chief, wearing a medal over my heart, I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel broken. I felt whole, not because of the applause, not because of the cameras or the speeches, but because I knew I had walked through fire and I had come out carrying my own name with pride. I am a veteran. I am a survivor. And I am someone who is recognized by the highest office in this country. But long before that medal touched my chest, I gave myself something no one else ever could. I gave myself permission to believe that I was more than what they said, more than the silence, more than the shame. So if you're listening to this and you feel like no one sees you, if you've been overlooked, doubted, discarded, please remember, your story isn't over. Your value isn't tied to their approval. You don't need a medal to be a hero. You just need the courage to stand tall, even when no one's watching. That's what I did. That's where it all began. I believed in myself, and that changed everything. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever carried silence, scars, or strength that no one saw, then you're not alone, and this is your place. Here on Old Soldier Story, we share the quiet battles, the forgotten heroes, and the moments that shaped us. So if you believe in honor, in resilience, in real stories that matter, hit that subscribe button. Join our growing family of listeners who still value courage, dignity, and truth. New stories every week. Real voices. Real life, told by those who lived it. This is Old Soldier Story, where every scar has a name, and every name deserves to be remembered.